Well, hello, lovely listeners. Today I have the honor of speaking with Kylie Hanna. Kylie helps women heal from their past, transform painful and toxic relationship patterns, and step into the wholeness of who they truly are. Kylie is a mom to two girls and kitchen raves, apparently, Kundalini yoga, and but how'd you say that? Bachata?
Bachata.
Bachata. You'll have to tell me what that is. And Kylie's superpower is alchemizing stagnant energies in the body that block alignment and heart opening, and reprogramming subconscious beliefs that lead to people pleasing, poor boundaries, and attracting and tolerating toxic relationships, which is absolutely fecking huge. And that's why I was so interested to talk to you as well, because I'm a few months out of a toxic relationship myself. And so very interested to hear what you've got to say. And you use lots of different things, including theta healing, breathwork, meditation, energy healing, coaching, counselling. You do it all. So welcome, Kylie. It's an absolute pleasure to have you.
Thank you. What a welcome and introduction. Thank you. It's so good to be here.
So Kylie, I love myself and the listeners and anybody watching, we love somebody's backstory to find out, what's gone on for you in the past that has basically created the vision of you that we have today, the version of you that we have today. I'm a big advocate of personal growth, spiritual growth, and it's clear to me from your profile and what I've read about you so far that you've had some crap in your life, and rather than be the victim, you've turned that into a gift that you're giving to other people. So I would love to hear a bit about your backstory, and obviously any pivotal moments where you were just like, bollocks to this, it's time to change, and obviously how you got to where you are today. So over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. There's been many times I've said bollocks to this. Many times. I mean, my backstory really, I came into a very volatile relationship from birth. I was born prematurely because my mom and dad were actually having an argument at the time, and whether that contributed to me arriving early, but I arrived 2 months early. So anyone who knows about energy work knows about the importance of like belonging and feeling safe as a youngster. It really starts in the womb.
Yeah.
And I arrived and was put straight into an incubator for a couple of weeks. And so that straight away, and I've really seen that play out as I've started to unravel some of the deep programming and the nervous system dysregulation that I now know, now I'm aware of, but I wasn't for decades. Just thought, I don't know, I just need to have a glass of wine, or I just need to come and shop, or I need to just whatever, pleasure myself, or be pleasured actually, because pleasuring myself wasn't really a thing. But yeah, and it just really started from birth, and my mum and dad's relationship was really volatile. And I really come from, like, as many of your listeners I imagine will feel the same, as transgeneration, if I could cross the generations, come from also a series of broken homes, dysfunctional relationships, abuse of different kinds. And what we don't realize is we're carrying all this in our DNA, right? So it's transferred genetically to us, and we're picking up all the feelings and emotions of our mother in the womb. And so already I kind of feel like, we're off to a bit of a start where we've got a lot to unravel. Yeah. And actually what then plays out in our lives is all of this genetic coding and the experiences we have from when we're in the womb to about 7 or 8 when we're in constant record mode. But for me, I grew up with my dad sometimes there, sometimes not, mostly not. Actually, I was in jail in and out of my childhood, and up until the age of about 14, he was probably there. I think he had 20 prison sentences, just to give you an idea of how much he was in prison.
Wow.
So at first there was the longing, like, oh, why isn't my dad here? And then as I got a bit older into sort of adolescence, teenage years, it was like anger and resentment around that, and not really having an outlet for that, to be honest, because in our home, anger was violence, and there was no way I could feel my anger. And so I really grew up suppressing a lot of the emotions, and that was grief, frustration, anger, resentment, and really they were just coming out sideways. And I think because I saw my mom go through this abusive relationship, and it was very narcissistic, codependent as well, a very much an anxious attachment, avoidant attachment dance of like pushing and pulling and not really understanding each other. And just from what I gained from that, my understanding and what became my relationship blueprint out of that was relationships are a power struggle. You must always, in order to stay safe emotionally, you must be on the top. You must be in control, right? And so my version of that was, I'm going to become really independent, really successful, and I'm not going to let anyone hurt me. So I had really big boundaries, tight, tall walls around me. And because of that, really, by the time I was 26, I'd only had one relationship. But that one relationship was with someone that was long distance, probably for that reason it felt a bit safe. But then when we did live together, all of that enmeshment and codependency and kind of all of the lack of chemistry came out as well, because I think it didn't match the signature of what I had in my relationship blueprint, which was passionate, loving relationships are dangerous. And because that relationship was it wasn't violent, he was a beautiful, lovely person, but he felt too safe, right? And I think some listeners will recognize that, like, oh, this, feel like it's more of a friend. And it's really important, I think, to recognize what is nervous system dysregulation and what is chemistry, because they can so easily get confused. So yeah, I mean, and from there, from that first long-term relationship, which that ended with him ending his life after we separated. We were still living together, and that in itself, it took me a decade to try and process that. Although, how do you? I just didn't know how. I was like, when it first happened, like I could cry a river. I was crying all the time, and then there's a point where you just go, I've just got to get on with life now, right? Everybody else has moved on. The world is still turning. Everything's gone back to normal. And so what I didn't realize from that, though, is I just then suppressed it and just kind of cracked on.
Can I just ask, in terms of him taking his life, which is really, really sad, you said you'd already split up at that point, although you were still living together. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
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 And did he leave you a note and an explanation, or?
Yeah, he did. And actually, the night before, we'd been at a party of a mutual friend. And even the week before, he'd been out dancing on tables, having the time of his life. But this is the thing with mental illness, right? And depression. You can be high one minute, you can be pretending even like, I'm great, I'm fine. But then actually the reality hits you like a ton of bricks, and you're just like, I've got nowhere to go. And what happened was, when we was at that party the night before, he actually had been drinking. He was actually asleep, and some sort of argument kicked off, and he felt incriminated in that argument, so he left, got in his car instead of a cab, and he actually got pulled over by the police and put in a cell. And he was so scared, because he'd already been done for drink driving before, like 10 years before, and nearly gone to prison, and it was the most terrifying prospect for him. That I think in that moment, when he's lost his relationship, he'd moved from Essex to Nottingham to live with me, didn't feel like he had a support network. His only friend he'd just had a row with, he's now in a police cell. So I can only imagine, and I have imagined a lot of times, you can imagine over the last 13 years, the turmoil he would have been in. But yeah, so he came home in the home that we lived in, and put his suit on, wrote a note, and then went up into the attic. And yeah, it was the darkest time, and I carried a lot of guilt that I couldn't, because I found him about probably an hour and a half after he'd been let out of the cells. So it wasn't very long, and that in itself was like, oh, if only I'd just got home sooner, if only I'd just fill in the blank for years, but yeah, that was a lot to unpick.
Crikey, I can't even, I hear these stories, about people finding people, and it's happened to a close friend of mine. She manages a student accommodation, big massive block, and she found somebody, and it traumatized her, and that's somebody that she'd only known for a few months, probably 2 or 3 months at that point. So for you 8 years and obviously a bit longer, that must have been horrific.
Yeah, we were. I mean, although it's something it didn't work out romantically between us, but he was the closest person to me. He was my best friend, and it was in relationship for 8 years. And so then for him to just be gone, and it just was like, and there were times after that that I felt like I remember driving, because at that point I was living in Nottingham, working in Birmingham, and driving down the motorway, and that was my time. I had this really high pressure job, because that's how I've always coped. Like, I'm going to throw myself in and do, and be in doing mode all the time, because then I don't have to sit with myself, right? And the only time I did actually sit with myself was on those journeys back, and it was an hour and a half, or sometimes 2.5 hours on the bloody M42 or whatever it was. And oh my God, the tears and the regret and the shame and the guilt, mainly guilt, that would come out then. And there were times in the early days where I was like, I could literally drive my car into that massive concrete pillar there and it'd be done. And these are just the thoughts that, it sounds so dark and heavy now. And it's so strange talking about it now, because I'm so far removed from that place. But, I guess I'm just sharing that in case anybody's been in that place, or if they're in that place now, especially, whether they've lost somebody or they're just in that place of I can't carry on, it always gets better. Like, that's my deepest belief. And that's really why I think I found it so hard to believe he'd done that, because my firm belief, my inner core, is like, if it's not getting better, then it's not over. Like, there's always a solution, there's always an answer. So yeah, I hope that helps.
Yeah, so, and obviously we started chatting earlier and I've been having some technical problems, but you said you met your to become husband a month later.
Yeah, soon, right?
Yeah,
really soon. But I think because of the previous, this is the way I justified it. And again, for anybody who's in this space, just a word of caution, I was like toing and froing in the past relationship of like, oh, it just feels a bit like we're house buddies, mates. There's not really that chemistry, that fiery chemistry that I really wanted, right? And again, this is why I'm like, make sure it's not this dysregulation of your nervous system, and it is chemistry, because for so long I confused the two. But I really wanted that like fire, because for me, again, like, see my mom and dad's relationship, they had that passion, but that passion tipped over into like volatility and like anger and frustration and violence so quickly, or quite often. But yeah, because I was kind of toing and froing about, should we stay together, shouldn't we? And we'd already broken up about 2 years before we then broke up permanently. It'd been going on for a while of me like longing for this like more fiery, passionate connection that I thought was going to be it,
yeah.
And so, and I felt that instantly when I met my now ex-husband. We both did. And I know now in hindsight why we attracted each other. We attracted each other because we both had very similar stored energies, lots of shame, lots of grief, lots of suppressed childhood stuff that we hadn't resolved. And we were we were meant to meet. I believe our souls brought us together to act as a catalyst for healing. And we had the conversation of, yeah, I'm going through this. And he was like very sympathetic, but he did say, maybe, I think he actually even said like damaged goods.
Mm-hmm.
You might be like damaged goods. And at the time I was a bit like, that's not very empathetic, but I'll just kind of forget he said that. And yeah, we just kind of got into this kind of whirlwind romance, and things escalated very quickly. And it made sense as well, because I had this house in Nottingham where that awful thing had happened, and I was working in Birmingham. He lived in Birmingham. It was like, well, it's nice over here. I'm just going to kind of stay a few nights a week. And then it just really quickly progressed. But I just didn't have the emotional awareness. I didn't have even awareness that I was scared of intimacy, right? I didn't know I was carrying all this stuff. And I didn't really know that until 11, 12 years later, when the marriage completely broke down. It had just taken on a similar signature, if you call it that. There were some things in my marriage that basically echoed what I'd experienced in my childhood. And that is so common now with the women that I work with. There's always elements of, in the relationships they've got as adults, similarities to childhood. And it's just because we've picking up on the same energetic charge, and that's what's actually attracting us like a moth to the flame of like repetition compulsion, psychologists call it. You know, we have to repeat the same painful patterns as a subconscious drive to heal it this time. But unless we have the tools and the awareness, like, how can we? And I didn't know what I was experiencing. I didn't know that I was being gaslit. I knew that there was violence. I knew that there was verbal abuse, emotional unavailability, you know, and that was painful. Like, anyone who's in a relationship listening to this and you're feeling like every time you lean in, they lean out, that is painful. And I just want to, you know, acknowledge that pain, because it can feel so confusing, right? You're like, oh, if I just do it this way, if I just speak to them this way, if I just, and then when you lean out, they lean back in, and it's this dance that kind of goes on. Yeah, so it really is getting to that inner self, that blueprint that's within, you know, clearing that energetic charge so that, you know, you can move forward. But yeah.
So for you personally, so you got into a new relationship pretty quick. There was obviously a lot to that, you know, in terms of the hurt and everything you felt from what you'd experienced, which, you know, we all have different drivers that send us into these different situations. How quickly in that relationship did the violence or the verbal abuse start? Was it like a few years in, or was it quite quickly, or?
Yeah, and it's a really good question, because it's something that I kind of dismissed at the start, because it was just me, it didn't affect anyone else. But it was about the year mark,
yeah,
that there was first violence. And you know, you put it down to things like, oh, we both had a drink, maybe I said the wrong thing, maybe I triggered them too much, it was me, basically. And it's so common for women to do that. Like, it must be something I said, or it's their depression. That's the one that I then went on at the years later to, because that wasn't clear at the start. You know, if I felt the emotional withdrawal about a year in, and that then set off my insecure attachment style, my like fear of abandonment, my like leaning in and like trying to fix things, and my rescue and my people pleasing and my lack of boundaries, all of that then kicked in. And yeah, it then gradually just got worse. Although there were some good times, obviously I wouldn't have stayed if it was always like that, but it just cumulatively got worse over time. And I think that's a really important thing to say. Like, if you're in a relationship where you're experiencing any kind of abuse, just think, you know, things as they are at that point where you're experiencing that, if that's how it was at the start, would you have tolerated that? Like, no. So why now? Like, I think we can think, oh, we've invested so much time and energy and whatever else you've got mutually together, but actually what's more important for you and yourself is to feel safe.
Yeah.
And to know that you're really leaning into what you deserve and not settling for less, which again is why I love the name of the podcast, Never Settle.
Yeah, I can completely relate to that. You know, the last relationship I was in, which ended a few months ago, and I thought was the best relationship I've ever had to begin with. And he was actually a friend. When we first started dating, we'd been friends for 23 years at that point. And we were actually in a band together. That's how I met him back in 1997. I joined his band. And so over the years, we've done music as well, on and off, you know, and something changed in 2020. We started dating, but I have to say, the narcissism which you mentioned previously, I didn't even know what a narcissist was when I was in this relationship. I didn't know until I'd come out of it.
Yeah.
And it was only 3 months in with me and him where he first threw a drink in my face, and he was so fucking convincing that it was my fault.
Yeah.
Because I've never experienced that at that level before. And I'd got previous experience with him as a friend, you know, like when we were in the band years later, he'd say, oh, you were really selfish when you were in the band and this, that, and the other, and blah, blah, blah. And so I'd had that over the years anyway, in terms of that little imprint that he'd put there.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, and so he was very convincing. And the second time it happened, he was very convincing. And I've never been in an abusive relationship, and I'm 50 this year. So for the first time, I was 48, just about to be 40. Yeah, no, I was 47, just about to be 48. And so it was new territory for me. And I will hold my hands up now and I will say, I have judged women in the past for sticking around in that abusive relationship. Why the hell are you doing that? Are you stupid? Have you got no frigging self-worth? Come on, love, get yourself out of that. And all of these things. And I've experienced that, not directly, but subconsciously and sort of from a friend of mine, where I can feel that judgment as well. Like, because I'm not that person, I'm a coach. I'm the person that people come to. I'm the person that I've helped a lot of people over the years. I'm not the person that puts up with this shit. And so there was judgment. I felt the judgment coming in, and also judgment for myself, because I'm like, no, I'm not the person. And even if I experienced it once, I wouldn't stick around. And yet I did, because of the things you said. He got a broken childhood, a lot of trauma, abuse there. There was excuses, there were reasons, there was this, there was that. And I was the one that was trying to fix it. And I have been for 25 years. I've tried to help and be a support and help him get to a place of peace, inner peace. But obviously that person's got to want it as well.
Oh, 100%. And that's really where I had to really accept that the relationship wasn't going to work, because I could almost like tolerate anything. And again, because I kind of badged the bad behavior on the depression, and then it wasn't until a health worker said to me, I just want to share something with you. She said, I work with people with bipolar and schizophrenia, and they don't they don't physically attack. That's not a reason. Depression, any mental illness is not a reason to physically attack you. And I was like, oh, this is an expert in mental health saying to me it's not an excuse. And I was like, oh, okay, so that's that layer of like excuse gone. Like, now where do I go? Because I so wanted it to work. I've got kids with this man, had a great, we had a beautiful home, we had the stepkids living with us. It was just like insurmountable for me to think, first of all, that I'd failed. That's the thing, right? Where you believe that you've failed if you walk away. And that I was giving up, because I am like a dog with a bone with anything I do, right? So I'm like, I'm never going to give up. And that plagued me. And this thing of like you talked into, like needing to fix them. Like, if I just do this one thing, just get him to the doctor's appointment, if I just help him to connect with more men, if I just work on me, if I just clean the house, if I just make sure the kids are perfect. Oh my God, it's literally awesome. Bloody hell, it burnt me out. It left me with like, I was literally having a panic attack on the floor once, where all of my extremities, my feet, my hands were cramping up. I don't know what, I still to this day don't really know what it is, but the doctor said it was a panic attack. And I remember the real lack of empathy. I don't know if he just shut off and he just didn't know what to do, but I remember him stood above me just looking at me on the floor, like literally there, like, please call an ambulance. I felt like I was having a heart attack. But yeah, I mean, the thing with your situation, and with so many, and the thing with me as well, like, when we are attracted to these men with women, or whatever your orientation is, whatever experiences as well, but you're falling for a facade. You're falling for a false self. Like, you're not in love with the real person, because they are not connected to their real essence either. Through whatever shame, whatever trauma they've experienced, they've separated themselves. It's too shameful, it's too painful. They can't be connected to their authentic self. So they create this image over here, and they become so good at portraying this image, whatever they in their mind, their own programming is acceptable in the real world, is going to keep them safe. Just like our programming is just as distorted, right? Well, codependence programming, which is empaths without boundaries, is how I describe it. This whole thing of, oh, if I just be nice to people, if I just fix them, if I just be helpful, if I just be polite, if I just serve everybody else, if I just prioritize everyone else's needs over mine, they'll like me, they'll accept me, I'll feel safe. It's just as messed up, right? But it feels so much more insidious, because that that shame comes out as anger and rage and violence a lot of the times in narcissists. Whereas ours tends to come out in like passive aggression. You know, the other side of the coin, the empath, the codependent side of the coin, seems to come out as like, yeah, this sort of emotions coming out sideways, and we're like, why are we triggered by this? I don't understand what's just happened in that exchange, but I'm like raging. And it's all that old energy that's trying to come out, but we're not allowing it. We don't know how to express our emotions, just like they don't know how to express their shame, anger, and grief, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy because you were saying, like, you know, you vowed to yourself you weren't going to replicate your mum and dad's relationship, and that's exactly what you did. And I said exactly the same thing. Like, my husband, we've been separated and divorced a long time now, but he was similar to my dad in lots of ways, or rather that the dynamics were similar to mum and dad. You know, like you said, the friendship, the lack of passion, the lack of chemistry. My dad was a legend, by the way. I love my dad dearly, a great bloke. But in terms of him and my mum, they should probably never have got together. Do you know what I mean? In terms of a beautiful relationship. That it wasn't violent or anything like that. Well, not that I ever saw, but it wasn't violent. I think there was some stupidity in their younger days when they were drinking. But you know, he was not a violent man at all. Probably more my mother when she'd had too much sherry or something, you know. But I did the same thing. You know, I replicated that in terms of my marriage, and it was a place of safety because I'd had a relationship from when I was 20. I met this guy that blew my socks off. And he was the one that hurt me and hurt me and hurt me and hurt me emotionally. And so my marriage was a safe space, a safe place. You know, there was that love and friendship, but I knew I wasn't going to be able to get hurt like I've been hurt before. So it's interesting how we do replicate what we don't want. We attract what we basically don't want all the bloody time. But it's the getting yourself out of that and learning from that. And obviously that's what you did in terms of your marriage. And you mentioned social services. I don't know whether it was before our technical problems, but was that the catalyst for you to think, what the hell am I doing? I've got to get out of here.
100%. I mean, you know, having that kind of volatility and violence around my children, having been a witness to that kind of violence when I was growing up, because in my mind, I kind of was, you know, again, all of this kind of sense making, you know, making it okay, justification that I kind of did, because there's a really deep longing for it to work. You know, when you're a child and you go through dysfunction and you don't feel like you've ever got this strong family unit, you know, I can imagine it's not just me that then creates this like vow of commitment to have that, and you'll do anything to have that. And then when you feel like you've got it, but then so when you're in this level of like, well, when you want something so bad, you kind of can tend to slip into denial, and that's where I was. Yeah, all the justifications and everything else, but yeah, it wasn't until it really came to a crunch point with like the police visits and the social services being involved, and just me really realizing that I'm giving everything I can, I'm doing everything I can, I'm working on myself, I'm trying to help him to work on himself. He's just resisting every kind of every option available. Like, it was every option available was like a flat no. And that gives you nothing to work with, right? So I was just like, what can I do? And so and actually it wasn't until I'd left, and you know, we sold the house 3 days before lockdown, like, thank the Lord. It would have been so awful being in that house during lockdown, as I've heard so many people experience during lockdown, just the intensity of constantly being together, and in an already volatile situation, I can imagine that would be, you know, 1,000-fold. But I moved into a temporary house, and then I moved into my house that I'd bought, just waiting for everything to go through. And then I was like, you know, for a while I was able to busy myself and be like, I'm just going to set my home up. And I was actually relieved, like so relieved to have a safe space. That it, you know, I was so committed to making it a sanctuary that I then, you know, started doing all the things you do to get a house set up. But it was as kind of that started to dwindle, and I kind of done all the bits, and I was left with myself, like, more time. that all of the feelings, all of the grief, all the unresolved stuff basically started creeping back in. I remember just like there was just one day where I was just like at a crisis point of all these emotions coming up, and I remember just praying like on my knees, like, someone send me a solution, please. I'm ready to do whatever it takes to make sure that doesn't happen again. Like, I cannot do that again. After being in childhood and being like, I'm never going to have that relationship, recreating it in my adulthood, and then thinking, oh my God, it is me. There's something in me that's doing this. Yeah. And then shortly after, I was introduced to a different healing modality that I'd never tried before. And by that point, it's important to say, like, by that point, I was already really into the law of attraction. I was in network marketing. I was really into personal development and building my business from a perspective of like personal growth and like affirmations and understanding neuroplasticity and how the mind works. But then still really feeling like I'm doing all the affirmations, I'm doing all the things, I'm doing like the daily method of operation. But there's something else. So I'd have like temporary peaks in my business and then it'd plummet, temporary peaks, plummet. And this is what I've really found, like, we can't isolate one area of our lives. If we are carrying baggage, it affects everything. And so anyway, with this modality, it was really about delving into the subconscious mind, understanding where in our cellular makeup, like even down to like which organs are we holding emotions in. Like, so I've really delved into metaphysical anatomy, like Louise Hay's work. Her book You Can Heal Your Life was like my starting point with that. A few years before actually, but I then kind of only just correlated it to my own healing journey, relationships and like business at that point. And yeah, and you know, I just had so much to release from what I'd carried forward from my mom, from the womb even, you know, all the childhood imprinting of what relationships were, of who I was. I had like I've got books and books like this, you know, where I've been on calls because I did practitioner courses, and then the women that were on the courses with, we'd swap and we'd practice. So we'd have like 3, 4, 5 calls a week sometimes, you know, to really, because I was like, right, let's just get this shit out. I want every single faulty belief of I'm unworthy, love is violence, love is pain, I came here to suffer. All of these beliefs that I held on a subconscious level that are or were via the law of vibration, via the law of attraction, like attracting my reality, started to clear them, started to understand why I'd attracted the relationships that I had, you know, started to understand why I had the negative like mind chat that I did, you know, but even like down to why I behaved the way I did with, you know, rescuing and fixing and not being able to sit still, you know, which was big for me. And that took a while, that journey of, you know, really coming back into my body after years of disassociating and numbing and blocking everything out. And, you know, one of the things I really hear a lot is the past is in the past. Nuh-uh. The past is not in the past unless you've resolved it. Unless you've actually got, if you think of a memory, Joe Dispenza says it the best actually, a memory without energetic charge is wisdom. That's what he says. So anything else, therefore, is something that needs to be healed, right? So, you know, and we do sometimes get triggered about the same thing over and over again, but I see that as like we're onions and we heal on layers, and it's a deepening. Yeah. So that was my first kind of like intro into getting deep on the healing journey.
Okay, so so you got yourself out of a crap situation. You started to rebuild yourself and respect obviously what was going on for you internally, and starting to understand that and trying different modalities to help your own healing. When did you start to then transfer that into wanting to help others?
I think that desire had always been there. I mean, I'd done like energy healing, Reiki healing, and the coaching for 3 years before kind of everything went, you know, everything deteriorated. I ended up moving into my own home. And then when I found this modality, and I was like, there's like 25 or 28 levels to this modality of theta healing. There's so many different courses because it specializes in different areas. So everything from, you know, soulmates, which is like my one thing that I'm like, yes, I love that course. It's all about relationships. You and the creator, which is about your relationship to yourself. But there's so many different ones, like from working with animals and children and everything else. But I literally threw myself in, and then as I started to feel more confident about working on this, getting amazing results with the women that I was just doing the free swaps with, so I was like, time to take this out into the world, like show other people what theta healing is. So I was doing that for 18 months, 2 years, but I just felt like something's missing. I feel like I'm just not speaking to anyone. I feel like I'm just, because it was like I'd have clients, like one-to-one clients, like 4 or 5 a week, but they'd be on loads of different things, ranging from, like, I've got insomnia, I've got mental health issues, I know I've got some childhood trauma and I get triggered all the time, to weight loss, to money manifestation. And it just was like, I wasn't going about that thing that they say in marketing, like, you be speaking to everyone, you speak to no one. And I just felt like that. So, and I didn't think this is where it was going to go at all, but I actually then embarked on a journey to bring the modalities that I'd learned, like the nervous system regulation, polyvagal nerve theory, and the energy healing and the subconscious mind work, and the inner child healing and the past life healing, and all of these different aspects that I now know, like they all play a part in resetting and making healthy our relationship blueprint. That is what attracts people to us. Bringing that into a more immersive journey, because I felt like I'm seeing people one-to-one, and I feel like I'm like, the shifts were amazing, but I knew I could go deeper with them on a journey. So I embarked on this journey basically of bringing it into a program. Would you believe, 2 years ago? It feels like it's been the longest journey, and I thought it'd be done in about 3 months. But it's, you can't rush something amazing. And it's been a case of really understanding women on a deeper level, because I know I have my own experience, but I really wanted to really understand, like, what are the challenges women experience in relationships, and what are the themes, like, how do they feel. So I went out and did some market research, built this program about a year ago. I did my beta test last year and got rave reviews. The women were just like, they've gone on to just soar in like different ways, like gone on their own traveling and set up their own businesses, and just having that really embodied now, like, day-to-day experience. Whereas before it was like insecure, negative head chat, feeling small, like feeling, just carrying around like all of that toxic load. And just refining it, and working with some people in the background, working with one-to-one clients in the background, and now ready to relaunch. We're relaunching on the 13th of July, which is super exciting, and we have some expert guests who are coming in to help with that embodiment piece, from feminine movement and feminine flow, and polyvagal nerve theory again. Like, how can we actually use polyvagal nerve theory and exercises to help our nervous system regulation day to day, breath work, yoga, all these things. So
is this a webinar that you're doing on that date?
No, so I am going to be launching a masterclass on how to move away from toxic to healthy relationships. So what is toxic? Why do I attract toxic relationships? Really getting under the skin. And part of that will be doing some muscle testing, kinesiology, understanding what the ladies who come on, understanding what their subconscious beliefs are, and reprogramming some of those beliefs and during the masterclass. It's probably going to be over 3, 4, 5 days. I'm just getting the bones of that together now. But the journey I'm talking about is called the Radical Self-Love Rewire. And that's a 16-week guided journey where we'll jump on calls every single week. We'll have the embodiment work, we'll have the breath work, we'll have the subconscious mind repatterning. And it's really a chance for women to come together and actually guide, like, support and help each other to move through that journey. Because I think there's so, well, I know now with the nervous system knowledge that I have, that when women come together and groups come together, generally when we feel safe, we're co-regulating each other, we're helping each other's nervous systems to feel safe and to heal. So that's going to be a massive piece of it, the community that we'll build, and the breakthroughs that we'll have. So
amazing.
Yeah.
So when's that launched? July the what?
July the 13th is when we start our open container. So yeah.
What does that mean, open container?
That means when we start the first call.
Okay.
So people will be on a rolling 16-week basis, and then there'll be an opportunity for people to join back on as alumni, I'm sure. But it really is a journey of understanding what is a relationship blueprint. So I called it the Rewire because it all stands for something. So Rewire is rewiring that blueprint. Let's look at it. Let's review the blueprint. What are the faulty beliefs that you hold? What's the modeling that you had during childhood? Like, what do you believe about relationships? What music and films did you watch and listen to? Because that's like a real thing, right? All the music is, I can't live without you, I'm going to die without you. And, or it's about, you know, relationships that where the one of them's left and they've been bad to them. And my kids now, they're 5 and 6, and they sing these lyrics of like, you know, my lover was a snake, and all these different, I mean, it's JVFK they're singing at the minute, and it's all very
the
toxic.
music's terrible. Yeah, the music.
It is. It all goes in, right? We're on a theta brainwave until we're about 7 or 8 years old, and that's basically like it's all going into our subconscious mind. Super conscious of that, but we live in this technological world, and they just get exposed to so much. But anyway, that's the R. The E is about then embracing our energetics, and that means our inner child. So what experiences did our inner child have that weren't fully processed? What traumas are we still holding on to around relationships? Again, that's feeding into those belief systems. And then where did we form, this is the W, weaning off codependency, where did we form distorted coping behaviors? Because this isn't a blame game. This is like, you did what you needed to do to stay safe, right? You did what you needed to do, the people pleasing, the kind of the fixing, being there for everybody else, playing nice, staying small, you know, being quiet, not really living fully aligned and embodied, right, with what you really want and what you know you deserve, because we felt like we were then connected and safe. So it's it's as part of that module, we then look at the flip side of narcissism. We go through what are the red flags, and how to spot all of that, emotional unavailability and everything else. But I wanted to say, actually, in case anyone's in that place and you might have experienced it yourself, and no, I did, I think it's a really natural like process of like when we finished a relationship and it was like really super toxic, we're like, right, I am going to study everything to do with narcissism. I'm going to become the biggest pro on narcissism in the country, because then I will never fall for one again, because I'll know exactly what to look for. And I just see this pattern all the time of it just playing out, because you can spot it all you like, but if you are still magnetized to that because you've got matching energies of suppressed shame and grief and fear and anger, that's again, you know, you're going to be attracted. So it's releasing the energy, it's doing the energetic work and the subconscious belief work to stop that attraction to begin with. Then that takes us on to the I of rewire, and that is identifying and reprogramming the subconscious beliefs. And we do that in every module as we go through. So we've got a module on like the inner child. So it's a lot of the kind of typical beliefs that I've seen over working with, like, you know, hundreds of women over the years, of what are the typical beliefs that women with the codependency traits that attract these toxic relationships, what are the typical beliefs that they hold? And again, looking back through all of my notes, thousands of beliefs or hundreds of beliefs that I reprogrammed, and putting them into these modules wherever they fit best. But we've got, you know, a module on boundaries, a module on self-love and self-worth and self-esteem, really grounding into your values and your core of who you came here to be. I'm going off track, but the R is regulating the nervous system. And I think this is another key piece that a lot of women leave off, especially the ones that like, I'm going to study everything to do with narcissism. They're ignoring the subconscious piece and they're ignoring the nervous system piece. And that's when you're going to go for the dangerous. You know, if your nervous system is wired for drama, wired for danger, then you're going to keep on attracting that. And even if it's not in a relationship, actually, I just want to say this, because I see a lot of women fall into the trap of thinking, that's it, I'm just done, I'm not going to have a relationship, I am done, I'm going to be single, I'm really happy single, I am. And they I think they partly believe it, but I think that 99% of women, they want to be loved and held and nurtured and have fun and go out to dinner and have romance, right? So I think there's a little bit of denial there. But what I found is that it ain't as easy as that, because the universe will go, yeah, you're not in a romantic partnership, but let's send a friend to give you a bit of narcissism. Let's send your boss to undermine your boundaries and disrespect you, to see how you've learned and see how you're evolving. And we just can't avoid it. We can say like, no, we're going to stay single forever, but we just are going to keep getting sent the same lesson in different people, different bodies, until we learn it. So I've got on a bit of a tangent there. And then the last piece of the rewire, I could talk about this all day. I'm sorry, I'm just talking your ears off. is the rewire. The E is embodiment. So really becoming embodied, really grounded into that safety of your nervous system, and being able to be your own source of support. Because again, a lot of like codependency is, I need you not only to validate me, but I need you to regulate me. And again, we then may like transfer that onto a coach or a friend. You might get this yourself in your coaching practice if you've got, you know, clients that aren't able to emotionally regulate. They'll like lean on you for that emotional regulation. It's about giving them tools. This is what the E is, giving them tools to regulate themselves, to dissolve triggers, to self-soothe, come back in their bodies, and really step into like a new level of self-love abundance, you know. And a part of this as well is we do a lot of meditational work. We do a lot of connecting to source. Well, I don't say creator a lot, but you know, whatever your belief is, God, creator, the universe, source. But when you do that and you really strengthen that connection and you feel really held in that connection, you have unlimited abundance. You have unlimited self-worth, because that's the source of it, right? It's only through, and I love Robert Burney's work. He wrote a book called Dance of the Wounded Souls, I think it's called. And he really sets out narcissism and codependency as a spiritual issue of like being disconnected from source. And I have to say, so what I said, my bio that you read out, it says I can alchemize these energies. Well, how I see that is I scan. I literally I go through, use meditational process, and then there's an element of clairvoyance, clairsentience, and claircognizance, where I can literally see, feel, and hear the energies that are trapped in someone's body, the memories they relate to, sometimes not even this lifetime. But the amount of women that I work with, and just going back to this, like codependency is a spiritual issue, and it's one of like feeling disconnected from source, and we're like, why haven't I got any intuition? Why can't I trust myself? Why am I not seeing these toxic behaviors before they're like on top of me? Is because the amount of women I've worked with who, when it sounds, I don't know how spiritual you are now.
Very.
Yeah. So when we come in as this being of light into the womb, as the spark of God, the point of creation, what I've seen in dozens now of readings on women is that there is this trauma point of leaving beautiful, unconditional, loving source and coming into the density of this body. And that's like, you know, we can carry through rejection, abandonment, like I am rejected by God. And a lot of it, depending on our later programming, or even what we've carried through from past lives, then is, if I'm rejected by God, I'm rejected by the physical world. Therefore, money is not easy to come. Money's got a masculine energy, right, as well. So again, it just plays into so many different areas.
Amazing. Wow, bloody hell. There's a lot there. And there is a lot there. Because we've been having some technical issues, so this has gone over the hour, and I've got a call in 5 minutes. So I'm going to have to bring this to an end, even though I don't want to, because I know there's so much more that you could share. But for the purposes of anyone that's listening that really resonates for, where can they find you? And it was the 13th of July that your next thing is starting. But if they were interested in that, where's the best place for them to go?
Yeah, well, what I'll do, I'll send you a link. It's KylieHannaHealing.com. Kylie Hanna, as you say on the screen, if you can't see the screen, if you listen to some audio, Hanna is Hanna. So it's KylieHanna, healing.com. And on there, I have a contact page. You can find me on Facebook as well. I have a private Facebook group where I go in there and I do some of the subconscious mind work. I share the insights around healing from narcissistic abuse and codependency and people pleasing and rescuing. So I would really say join that. It's called The Self, just recently renamed it. So I'm like, what's it called again? It's called the Self-Love Sanctuary, Heal Your Relationship Blueprint. And I really encourage any women that resonate with this work to come into there. This is a really psycho-spiritual approach to healing this problem, because I really feel like that's the root of it. So instead of being like a mind and a top-down approach, this is a real inside-out approach. So I would love to have you in the group, and just reach out to me on Facebook Messenger if you would like support.
think I might join myself, Kylie. I'm going to check
I
that out.
would love to have you. That would be yeah.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, Kylie. Thank you so much for sharing so vulnerably your story, and so much of it resonated for me personally, and that was one of the reasons I really wanted to get you on, as well as obviously the great work that you're doing for lots of women. So I love it. ThetaHealing is also something I started to look into myself a few months ago, because I'm a Reiki practitioner as well. So there's lots of synergy here. So yeah, I will check out your Facebook group.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your patience with our technical issues today. And thank you. And I like to finish these conversations with any pearls of wisdom. And obviously I'm short on time. So just a short pearl of wisdom from you. Thank you.
I would just say to finish, it's not the person you were last in relationship with. It's what I would say, don't just trust the next person's going to be different. Ask, why did you attract them? Go within, look at the wounds, look at the triggers, and from that place, focus on your healing journey on those things.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, completely 100% agree with that, because I know that what happened to me a few months ago was a reflection of the healing that I need to do, without a shadow of a doubt. So
and it's so much more empowering, right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, not the victim. This is something I've got to do. Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you again, Kylie. It's been a pleasure, and catch up soon. Thank you.
Sending you so much healing. Thank you all. Bye.